Welcome, Dr. Nordquist. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. And on behalf of the Obsidian Foundation, we really appreciate you taking time to meet with us and speak to our audience. Before we
Um,
start, would you mind taking a moment to introduce yourself?
yeah, Jess. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I've really enjoyed getting to know the people of the Oxidium Foundation. What a great foundation, and their mission is impressive, and it's definitely needed. So, I'm Dr. Luke Nordquist. I'm a medical oncologist in Omaha, Nebraska. I have a special focus in prostate cancer. I'm the founder and CEO of XCancer and also theranostic I started my career as a pharmacist in the 1990s and then went back to medical school and was at the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida for residency, and Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City for fellowship, where I had a special interest in prostate cancer. After completing training, I moved back to Omaha, closer to home, and opened my own cancer center eventually in 2010, which is branded as XCancer. I started with 3 employees and 3 clinical trials, and now fast forward 15 years, we've conducted several hundred clinical trials, phase 0 through phase 3, accrued nearly 2,000 patients on clinical trials on those trials, and we've done 23 first in world clinical trials at my center, and now we even help other cancer centers around the country follow the same model and open up clinical trials in community centers closer to home.
Well, it's certainly impressive all that you've accomplished over the last decade and a half, and your background is very unique. As a medical oncologist and having trained at Sloan Kettering and having a pharmacy background, what inspired you to refocus and to work with radiopharmaceuticals? And how did you really decide to focus on theranostic clinical trials?
Yeah, I remember that day. So I guess as early, like around 2011, I sat down with my COO at the time and said, "Hey, look, we're a self-proclaimed cancer center of excellence for prostate cancer, and there's this new drug, radium 223, Xofigo. And I'm a medical oncologist. I'm not an authorized user. How am I going to get this drug? And I can't be this center of excellence and not be able to administer this drug." So we thought about it and said it was worth the investment and came up with an idea that we could set up an independent contract with an authorized user and have them come in and bring on an RSO, and we were off and running. And we started doing Xofigo in my clinic, and we had such a good experience with it and such a program that was working that we started even what we called the traveling AU program, where we'd fly my team to other centers like Wichita, Kansas, and administer Xofigo at other centers around the Midwest that didn't have programs set up. So that was how we were off and running. And then along came the Vision trial, and we put the first patient in the Vision trial globally. We put the first 17 patients globally on that trial, and we put the most people on. And according to Novartis, we had the highest quality data of all 90 centers for the quality of the clinical trial data. And so really we're off and running then, and then the trials kept flooding in. So we shifted from conducting all prostate cancer trials, drug therapies, vaccines, immunotherapies, chemotherapy studies, and we still do some of those, but really because of all the surge of theranostic clinical trials, we're probably about 85% of our trials now are all theranostic trials, both imaging and therapeutic at my center.
Okay. That's very impressive. So you've built out your very robust clinical practice.
Mhm.
Building out a theranostic clinical trial site is a bit different. Can you talk the audience through your thinking and your considerations when you're talking to referring physicians about radioligand therapies that are outside of the ones that other physicians typically know about? And how do you approach your colleagues or oncology colleagues on tumor boards to explain the new therapies and options outside of typical
Yeah,
radio?
a lot of good questions there. So when I'm talking to other medical oncologists, most medical oncologists are community medical oncologists. They treat all cancer types. They're treating breast cancer, lung cancer, et cetera. Many of them don't do clinical trials. They're doing a lot of the FDA-approved therapies only. And these community medical oncologists, they're small businesses. So they see patients with all cancer types, and they sequence drugs in all these patients. And how the world of community medical oncology works is we decide to give a treatment, we get approval by insurance to give it, we go buy the drug from a wholesaler, we give the drug, and then we hope to get paid back for that drug that we bought with a margin on it. Now, that's not a big deal if it's a cheap drug, but some of these drugs are $50,000 a dose. And if all of a sudden you give a drug and an insurance company comes back and says, we're not going to pay you for it, that's a really bad day in a community cancer center. So when we're dealing with very expensive drugs like, Pluvicto, Lutathera, it's a high risk for these community cancer centers to give these drugs. Most medical oncologists haven't been overly impressed with Xofigo or radium-223. So if they really haven't been involved with these clinical trials, they don't really see all the benefits that these radiopharmaceuticals are providing for our patients and the excitement for the future. And, many of them aren't really aware of, the difference between the alpha and the beta emitters and the different targets that we're now going after. So there's a lot of education that has to happen there. But here's the problem. They are the sleeping giant. So community medical oncologists treat about 80% of the metastatic cancers out there today. And they're the ones with the patient. So in order to do radiopharmaceuticals, you have to have an authorized user involved. And that authorized user is a physician that's either a radiation oncologist or a nuclear medicine physician. Well, in the United States, nuclear medicine physicians don't have patients. They're more of a consultant to read imaging. I know in other countries they do have clinics. For radiation oncologists in the United States, very involved with cancer patients, but most of their care is either involved in the localized disease setting, where they're trying to cure a cancer, or in a palliative setting, but still most of them are treated by medical oncologists. And so that's the breakdown right there. You have these authorized users that you need to be involved, but the holder of most of these patients are the community oncologists. So there needs to be more programs that bring together all of these doctors together. And in a academic center or a hospital setting, that's much more feasible because, they all work together in one system, and the nuclear medicine physicians on one floor and the radiation and medical oncologist on another floor, and they send a patient up to get a certain treatment, they come right back down. But in the community, they might be at a community cancer center with the medical oncologist, and there isn't that fluidity of sending patients around, right? And so that's one of the dilemmas. We just had an SQV today for a potential study. It does take a big team. And so unlike just a regular medical oncology center, you need a number of other key players. Like I mentioned, you need an authorized user on board, whether it's an independent contractor, they're part of your team, which again, nuclear medicine physician or a radiation oncologist. I have 14 authorized users on contract at my center. You need a radiation safety officer. There's somebody that's going to make sure that all these safety precautions are being followed, and because radiation is a scary thing and you got to make sure that everybody's safe with it. Probably the greatest in need position is a nuclear medicine technologist. A lot of the programs closed because we almost thought nuclear medicine treatments for cancer was almost dead in the water until lutetium came out for prostate cancer. Now it's just exploded. So that's probably the most in demand, and probably the limiting factor for most of these centers is finding enough qualified nuclear medicine technologists. And then we have our research team, which you have to have people do budgets and contracts, regulatory documents with the FDA and IRB. You have to have people that do data entry back to the drug companies, research coordinators. So it really takes a village of people.
Now, you did mention that you've taken on trials that are using alpha emitters, beta emitters, and you are looking towards taking on trials that are going to implement astatine. And along those lines, in your view, what are the most promising radiopharmaceuticals and isotopes that you're looking towards for prostate cancer in the pipeline?
That's a great question. I wish I had a crystal ball, but when I first started this, it was mainly, well, do I like beta emitters or alpha emitters? So you have the target, right? The first thing, a target on the cancer cell. And then the second part, I give the analogy, if you go to my theranostictrials.org website, there's even a drawing of this, of a semi-truck pulling a trailer. So the semi-truck is, the second part is called the ligand. That is like the antibody, small molecule, peptide. That's like the GPS. We set that to go find the target. So in this case, let's say we're trying to find PSMA. So the second, then the third part is the trailer it's pulling, which either has a cargo of isotopes of diagnostic isotopes like gallium-68, F-18, copper-64, or it has the therapeutic isotope, which I call the bomb, which would be like lutetium-1, Lu-177, actinium, copper-67, lead-212, etc. So most people stop there and say, okay, we got a target and isotope, and we take it there. But there's more to the story. So we also have the hitch that connects the ligand to the isotopes. We call that the linker. And then we have the chelators, which are kind of the strap downs that hold the cargo in place. So some of these, like the Clarity's product, copper 64 and 67, it uses a bivalent hitch, a double hitch, so to speak, with a cage system around the isotope. So it keeps the isotope on target longer, where some of these theranostics, the hitch may break loose and the ligand, the truck gets to the target, but without the isotope that's floating around somewhere. So there's so much more to the story than just the isotope. I think we're learning it's more time on target, whether it's a beta or alpha, probably less important, but time on target is very important. And then there's different targets. We're now doing research on a new target called STEAP2 with actinium through AstraZeneca. And the difference between STEAP and PSAs are different. PSMA is a very good target for prostate cancer, but it's also found in salivary glands, so the treatment can cause dry mouth. There's uptake in the kidney neovasculature, so theoretically potential for some renal, toxicity, although we haven't seen a lot of that. But with STEAP, it's not found on the salivary glands. It's not found in the renal tissue. There's some other potential benefits of STEAP, but it's early on in that trial, so we'll see. But I don't have a sole winner yet. I'm excited about every new product I get to work with. I'm blessed that a lot of them come to us to take the opportunity to try these.
Those are excellent points. And I'm so happy you emphasize that it's not just the isotope, it's the end target. And as we spread into other tumor types and cancers, it's also each tumor type's inherent radiosensitivity. So there's so many different factors, and
Exactly.
It's important to communicate that it shouldn't just be isotope
Yeah.
centric. And last but not least, could you please tell me and the audience more about the XCancer Foundation and what it does and why there is a need to build more cancer housing?
Yeah, well, I'll step back a little bit and a little bigger, broader view of XCancer Foundation. Our motto is expanding the reach of cancer innovations. And cancer innovations mean different things in different part of the world. In the United States, cancer innovations like new therapies, clinical trials. And so we want more centers to be able to do this. And so again, the sleeping giant being community medical oncology centers. They're seeing 80% of the patients, but very few are doing clinical trials. We're trying to get more of those centers to do clinical trials where people don't have to travel so far to be on a clinical trial. They can get in their community where they have social and family support. So that's what it means to me, is the foundation of increasing cancer research awareness, overcoming the myths and misconceptions about cancer research, and getting more centers to do this. And I have a very special place in my heart in Tanzania, Africa. I've spent much time there. I've really gotten to know the cancer care in Tanzania, Africa. The physicians have come to my center before. So for a country of 65 million people, there's only 3 cancer centers. And where, like in Omaha, Nebraska, we might have 50, 60 oncologists for a catchment area of about 1 million people. In Tanzania, they have 3 medical oncologists for a catchment area of about 16 million people. And I used to think naively that, well, they don't have near the treatments we have. But really, after getting to know them, they have access to about probably 70% of the drugs we have for prostate cancer. And the problems there, though, are most people aren't catching cancer early. About 80% are caught when it's already metastatic and high mortality rate because of that. But also, after getting to know the physicians there and touring several times, one of the problems is in the United States, you get a treatment, you go home, you don't feel well, you drive home and you don't feel well, you call the doctor and you go to the emergency room or something, get IV fluids, come back in. Somebody there might get a chemotherapy for breast cancer and have to walk home 10, 12 kilometers. They're in a house, there's no electricity, they don't have phones, they don't have vehicles. And so they don't feel well, they don't come back. And it can be a real issue for like children with potentially curative cancers, like leukemias. And so they needed a housing program. So we created a housing facility there that houses up to 100 families, to where even patients far away as Kenya will come into Tanzania to get some of their care. And they really aren't far away from being able to provide these, even Theranostics. So we were very close to getting them Xofigo capabilities, but they now have put in linear accelerator vaults. They're putting in a linear accelerator. But once they have the capabilities, and a good friend of mine, Dr. Fraha Cervantes, a radiation oncologist by training from South Africa, he's one of their main oncologists of the program. They have the ability to do theranostics there, even in a place like Tanzania, Africa. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to helping work with them to make that a reality.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of our conversation today, Dr.
Oh, it's
Nordquist.
too bad. I have so much
Thank
more
you
to
so
say.
much. We'll have to
Yeah,
continue.
I'll definitely come back.
Thank you so much for joining and sharing all of your insights. And it's really been a pleasure. And I really, really enjoyed learning more about XCancer. And what you're doing is incredibly valuable. And I know that the Oncidium Foundation listeners and all of the audience will take a lot away from it. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.